This man lived 45 years of his life without knowing who his mother was. But suddenly, an old woman contacted him claiming to be his mother and that she had been looking for him all these years. But this wicked old woman had completely different intention. This is one of the strangest scam stories I've ever come across, and through it, we'll see how easily a person can be manipulated. And I promise you, the ending of the story will be one of the strangest endings you've ever heard. Graham Hornigold is a professional British pastry chef who earned a Michelin star, the highest honor in the culinary world. He works as a consultant for high-end restaurants, earns a great income, and occasionally appears on cooking TV shows. He married Heather Canuck, who was also a professional pastry chef. Both built public personas on social media and enjoyed a calm, stable life. To understand how their lives were turned upside down, we must look back at Graham's childhood. 1974. Graham was born in a British military base hospital in Germany, where his father was an army engineer. His father had an affair with a woman, Graham's biological mother. The separation. When Graham was 2 years old, his father cut ties with the mother and took Graham back to London. Graham grew up with zero memories of her. An abusive father. Raised by his father and stepmother, Graham suffered severe abuse. His father refused to discuss his mother, lashing out whenever Graham asked. Throughout his life, Graham held on to a deep longing for maternal affection. His birth certificate listed his mother's name as Hatun Hornigold. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Graham and Heather, pregnant, searched government archives for Hatun Mahmoud. They found nothing and soon shifted their focus to preparing for their baby during lockdown. Out of nowhere, Graham received an email that flipped his world on its head. "Hello, Graham. I'm not sure if this will reach you, but I've been searching for a way to contact you. My name is Dion. My son Graham was born in Germany before he was taken from me to England. If this makes sense to you, I hope you get in touch." Skeptical, Graham replied with specific verification questions unavailable online. Exact birth date. Dion correctly answered November 26, 1974. Mother's maiden name. Dion correctly answered Hatun Hornigold. Since only Graham, Heather, and his father had ever seen his birth certificate, Graham was entirely convinced. The meeting. Dion invited them to a hotel in Liverpool. Their reunion was intensely emotional. Graham embraced Dion, an elderly woman in her 80s, and immediately felt a deep emotional connection, noticing shared facial features. Dion claimed Graham's father had forcibly abducted him in Germany, leaving her unable to trace them. She warmly welcomed Heather, expressing joy over becoming a grandmother. The very next day, Dion asked to speak with Graham privately and dropped a bombshell. She claimed to have 3 types of bone marrow cancer with only 6 months to live. Caught between finding his mother and losing her soon, Graham felt an overwhelming duty to devote all his time to her remaining days. Dion then introduced Graham to her background and lifestyle. Global empire. She claimed to own massive agricultural estates exporting produce globally alongside palm oil processing plants in Indonesia and Malaysia. Philanthropy. Dion showed photos of herself distributing aid to poor villages in East Asia. Her workers called her Mama out of respect. Royal heritage. She made an even bolder claim that she was the illegitimate daughter of the former Sultan of Brunei, which explained her hidden fortune. Living in luxury. Dion moved to London, checking into 5-star hotels like the Dorchester, owned by the Brunei royal family, which further validated her claims to Graham. She showered them with designer gifts and took them to luxury car dealerships, offering to buy Graham a Range Rover Sport and Heather a BMW. At a Rolls-Royce dealership, a salesman recognized Dion and confirmed she had previously bought 2 Phantoms from them. While Heather was in the hospital enduring a traumatic labor with their first child, Dion sent pictures claiming she was coughing up blood due to her cancer. Feeling torn, Graham brought Dion to live in their home. However, cohabitation quickly turned toxic. Dion began criticizing Heather's parenting style, seizing control over the baby's routine, and creating severe friction between the couple. The trip to Zurich. 2 months after the baby's birth, Dion proposed a trip to Zurich, Switzerland. She claimed her primary bank accounts and assets were held there, and she needed Graham to sign legal paperwork registering him as her sole heir before her cancer took her life. Encouraged by Heather, who desperately needed a break from Dion, Graham flew to Zurich with his mother. They stayed at one of Zurich's most expensive luxury hotels and dined at Michelin-starred restaurants. Dion arranged a private VIP meeting at a major Swiss bank headquarters. The banker discussed global assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, no legal documents were signed due to the complexity of her holdings. While in Switzerland, the financial reality began to surface: missing savings. Back in London, Heather discovered $35,000 missing from their joint bank account. Graham admitted he used it to pay off Dion's unpaid hotel and restaurant bills in London, as Dion claimed her accounts were temporarily frozen due to pandemic protocols. Targeting Juan. Graham invited his close friend, a Spanish pastry chef named Juan, to join them. Dion promised Juan $3 to $4 million as a gift, but when Graham stepped away during dinner, Dion privately asked Juan for €2,000. When Juan said he had no extra money, Dion turned cold and accused him of being selfish, scamming Marcus and Jenyan. In the hotel lobby, Dion targeted an American couple looking for investors. She signed a contract promising to invest $3 million in their business. She then extracted nearly $100,000 from them for luxury clothes, meals, and a $10,000 fur coat, claiming her own cards were temporarily blocked. Scamming Bing. Dion promised a Chinese medical executive named Bing a $60 million investment. She convinced him to give her $50,000 in cash meant for charity, plus an extra €10,000, eventually defrauding him of $180,000. Whenever Graham mentioned returning to London, Dion staged dramatic health crises, feigning severe pain, lying motionless on sofas, and staging midnight suicide attempts on hotel balconies. Graham managed to return to London on Christmas Eve, but Dion bombarded his phone with photos of herself crying, ruining the family holiday. Arguments escalated between Graham and Heather over the endless trip and unfulfilled promises. Desperate for support, Heather took their baby to visit her family in New Zealand for 6 weeks. Dion manipulated Graham into staying behind, claiming she would die while he was away. Refusing to board the flight with his wife and child created a devastating rift in his marriage. Mounting debt in London. With Heather away, Dion rented an ultra-luxurious glass penthouse overlooking the River Thames. The financial drain peaked. Graham paid another $40,000 for her Zurich hotel bill. He opened multiple credit cards in his name for her use, racking up $30,000 in debt. The Range Rover and BMW were actually leased under Graham's name. When Dion stopped making payments, a $250,000 vehicle debt fell entirely on him. In under 6 months, Graham had spent over $130,000 of his personal savings and accumulated massive debt. From New Zealand, Heather reached out to Juan. Juan recounted Dion's strange demand for €2,000, confirming Heather's suspicion that Dion was a fraudster. Juan flew to Zurich to confront Graham face to face, asking how a woman with 3 terminal cancers could travel, eat huge meals, and live in luxury without showing signs of illness. Searching the room. That night, Graham searched Dion's belongings while she slept. Among her items, he found a bottle of red food coloring. He immediately remembered the photo Dion had sent him months earlier, showing a toilet bowl stained red, claiming she was coughing up blood. When confronted, Dion claimed it was traditional Chinese medicine. Graham then checked her prescription pill bottles online and discovered they were standard medications for blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes, not cancer. Shortly after, Bang contacted Graham, revealing Dion had scammed him out of $180,000 and was smearing Graham's character by telling people he was an abusive son stealing her money. Confronted with the overwhelming evidence, Graham demanded a DNA test. Dion refused, giving an ultimatum: either you believe your mother or you don't. Graham insisted, and technicians arrived at the London apartment to collect saliva samples. Realizing the game was over, Dion packed her bags in secret and vanished without a word. Weeks later, the official DNA report arrived. Graham opened it, expecting proof that this master scammer was a complete stranger. The verdict: the DNA test confirmed a 99.9% biological match. Dion was not an imposter. She was genuinely his biological mother. She had abandoned him as a toddler, resurfaced 45 years later, and systematically exploited his longing for maternal love to steal over $300,000 from him. Heather and Juan investigated Dion's background and uncovered the horrifying truth. Multiple aliases. Her real name was Dion Marie Hannah. Over 4 decades, she used various aliases, including Hatun Mahmoud, Hatun Hornigold, Dion Hornigold, and Dion Antonio Lewis, and had been married 3 times. Decades of fraud. Newspaper archives from the 1980s revealed a career in deception. In 1980, she was convicted of shoplifting and housing fraud, serving 18 months in prison. In 1982, she pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud involving stolen money and jewelry. Global exploitation. She had scammed victims across Southeast Asia, including taking $40,000 from an Indonesian businessman and stealing money from low-income Muslims who paid her for discounted Hajj pilgrimage trips. When COVID-19 travel restrictions trapped her in the UK with dwindling funds, she searched social media for her successful son and targeted him as her next victim. The psychological trauma and financial collapse completely destroyed Graham and Heather's marriage, resulting in divorce. Heather relocated permanently to New Zealand with their child, while Graham was left to rebuild his life from scratch. Arrest in Singapore. In April 2025, Diana Marie Hannah was arrested in Singapore after attempting to pull the exact same Brunei royal inheritance scam on local citizens. She was taken into custody and faced multiple counts of fraud. Graham Hornigold eventually shared his harrowing story in the Netflix documentary Con Mom to raise awareness about how emotional manipulation and childhood vulnerability can blind anyone to a predator.